What in the world is going on with Iran? It's like we are at a nuclear come to Jesus moment that you've explained many, many times. Are we literally at the beginning of the movie, or are we sort of in the middle of the movie, or are we approaching the end of the movie? Donald Trump has been beating his chest for quite some time. I think he has at some point been taken into the back rooms by some of the generals and saying, Mr. President, we know you're the president, we respect you, but you got to tone it down. We don't want the enemies out there to really understand how powerful we really are. When we went in to get Maduro, we went in to get him with stuff that literally sound frequency technology on steroids that will actually melt fucking people and make them bleed from the eyes and the ears and their heads explode and all kinds of crazy shit. The Mel Carmine Show begins in just 1 minute. Support the movement. Visit QFS1776.com for exclusive one-of-a-kind merch that makes a powerful statement. Protect your wealth. Cash is trash. Go to carminesgold.com and secure real assets, silver, gold, delivered anywhere in the U.S. Text Mel at 786-704-8817. Looking to acquire XRP? Minimum is $10,000 investment, and there is no limit, even up to $100 million worth. Again, text Mel with full details at 786-704-8817 and allow up to 24 hours for a response. And if by chance you're visiting Cape Canaveral or you are a local, visit stayingalive.com, alive with 2 E's, and recharge your body at the cellular level. The show with your host, Mel Carmine, starts right now. Juanito, I wish I could sit here and tell you that you were wrong all along, but you're not. As a matter of fact, you've been so deadly accurate on so many things, it's actually scary. What in the world is going on with Iran? It's like we are at a nuclear come to Jesus moment that you've explained many, many times. Are we literally at the beginning of the movie, or are we sort of in the middle of the movie, or are we approaching the end of the movie? Enlighten us, please.
Well, Iran is so central to everything that's going on within getting the world back on an even keel. The problem is they've been exporting terrorism horrors out across the world for, since the regime switched 47 years ago, interesting number. And what people don't really realize is how devastating this cult of Islam, this particular cult of Islam that's been running Iran is all about. They presided over much of the horrors that went on in the Congo, been in there the whole time while the Congo's been going through all these dramas. 10 million people dead in the Congo, an equal number of having going out as a diaspora across the region and out to the rest of the world. You got 2.5 million people, refugees out of the Congo in just Uganda alone, and over half of them are under 18 years of age. The stuff in Yemen, the stuff in just a half a dozen countries in the Mideast alone that Iran has, under their thumb. 300,000. It's a hard number to even get your brain around. 300,000 missiles built in Iran, shipped across Syria, and parked in Lebanon, to use to attack Israel. Another 100,000 in the Hamas-controlled areas in Gaza. The disruption in Syria, in large part orchestrated by Iran. Same thing in Iraq. Even as the U.S. has withdrawn from Iraq, Iran has been working deals on the border country regions around Iran, sending power in and buying the favor of people that hate America inside Iraq. Even when they didn't have enough power to run their own country, they're still sending power in as part of the leverage to make sure that everybody's working with them. Afghanistan, Iran, right in the middle of everything going on in Afghanistan, where we had so much activity. That's just the Mideast. There are intricate ties to Venezuela and being a conduit for money laundering for the oil out of Venezuela and the drugs and other things. By the way, where were both of them running a lot of the money? Remember all that pallets of cash that went to Iran under Obama? Well, a lot of that was coordinated with going through Ukraine. Now that Ukraine has fallen off the map with some of their banking stuff and like that, you had to hide the trail. Where did it go? It went right where I'm at right now, going through Italy, going through Vatican. All sorts of people. No, that's not true. Well, you watch. Iran intricately tied into the vote fraud scams going on around the world tied to Venezuela. You're going to find out stuff about Iran's involvement in all sorts of things to, you had 71 countries plus the United States where the vote was frauded. Iran is all through all of that. Even their activities, for example, let's say Argentina, Iranian operatives are the ones that blew up the Jewish Israeli group there in Argentina decades ago, and they're still operating strong in there. You're going to find out more and more about Iran's involvement, probably real number, where Iran was involved directly or indirectly, deaths across the world in the last 47 years since they came to power in Iran, this Islamic crew, this cult really, that taints what Islamic believers believe. The people of Iran in 2008, they only wanted a more moderate leader, not the extremist leader that the Ayatollah wanted. They just wanted a more moderate one. And for that, thousands died. Thousands were killed because they just wanted somebody a little more moderate, not quite so extremist on the religious side of the operation there. And for that, thousands died, tortured brutally. I was just over at Jayco's site, and I just got a phone with a friend of mine who's very involved in a lot of this from the Iran side. In Iran, they've been going through a drought, and a lot of it's poor management and all sorts of other things. It's not just the weather. And so this water behind this dam about 25 miles out of Tehran kept falling and falling and falling, kind of like Lake Mead over in Nevada. And as the water got down lower and lower, they kept finding bodies and then finding more bodies and more bodies. It's all the dissidents. They beat and torture and maim them so badly that they didn't want the families to see the body. So they just take them over to the dam, weight them down, and then throw them down in the bag beside the dam. And so they've found so far 183 bodies as the water level dropped and dropped.
Wow.
And those are the ones they found. There's probably many, many, many more that they haven't found, but those are the ones that they've found. And one of the things this year, because I've attended it a number of times, there's a meeting of the Iranian people that are here in the United States, having fled Iran after the Shah fell and like that. Pahlavi, the son of the Shah, the crown prince is the way they refer to him, who would be king now if his father had stayed in power. He lives up in Virginia and has been here, since his father was taken out of power. And at the meeting this year, they had a couple of the dissidents who'd been gotten out of Iran and came here to speak. And the story they tell of the situation in Iran, and remember, Iran is the fastest growing Christian population in the world for the last many years. There's been a move of God in Iran that is, really stunning, amazing. And it is, it's the land of Esther from the book of Esther in the Bible. It's the land where Daniel in the Bible is buried. Because after Babylon fell, Daniel read the writing on the wall for the rulers there in Babylon. And it said, you've been weighed in the balance and found wanting. Your kingdom is required of you. And that's when the disembodied hand of God reached out and wrote in the plaster on the wall or the rocks on the wall, and their knees were knocking. But then Daniel was taken not as a captive, but as a prophet, because he had said what was happening before it even happened, to Persia, because it was the Medes and the Persians that overthrew Babylon, the wonder of the world at the time. And he was revered in Persia as a great prophet and in his last years, and was killed there by his religious opponents, if you will. But there's his burial site is there. That's where Esther from the Bible is buried. So Iran has a history that is actually tied to Judaism and Christianity down, over time. They're having this huge move of God. Churches are, blowing up, home churches like that, like crazy across Iran. And people had enough of the way that the mullahs and Islamists had been ruling. So a lot of what's happened in the destruction, you see these mosques being burned down all over Iran right now in the rioting. And then the only people that could get the policing jobs and the high-end military jobs were these Islamists. And so now the people where they've been being attacked and really oppressed by these policing and military groups, they're now the hunted. And so the ones that were the worst, for example, these these two dissidents that came to America told about their experience at this meeting this last year. The way that they were marking these people wasn't to kill them because they want, terrorism. I remember one of the people that I was getting some training by was describing an incident, and they had killed the terrorists in this incident who were Chinese, had killed like 189 people in the most gruesome, horrible ways. And they left 3 people brutally maimed, barely alive. And when the other forces got to them, 2 of the 3 had died, but 1 was left. And so brutally maimed, but alive. And she got to tell the story. Why didn't they kill her too? Why didn't they kill those other 2 that were just barely alive? And the instructor said, because it's not terrorism unless you have somebody to relate the whole story. When it's just a corpse, all of the horrors that led to that moment don't affect you the same way. Having somebody to repeat, explain in intricate detail, or even if you want to say it was embellished or whatever, tell you what happened, that's what invokes terror. So in Iran, they weren't killing everybody. If they had somebody that was just had said something or questioned or whatever. So for example, they had cameras on every corner and facial recognition. And they also had listening monitors in Iran until just a few days ago.
Wow.
That were recording voices and could triangulate who the voices were that were talking in various places. If you had a conversation with somebody that they were following, or you said something that, might have been heard, they wouldn't get you there on the street where everybody got to see you. They'd track you with the cameras back to your home. Then they'd show up in the middle of the night, take your son, your daughter, whatever, and, do whatever they're going to do to them and kill them. But if they wanted to send a message to everybody else, their latest form of terrorism now for the last several years has been they'd take a pellet gun and they'd shoot it in your eye, blind you in one eye. If they were really pissed, they'd get both eyes. But then you are alive. They can see you on the street. You're a marked person the rest of your life, men and women. And then anybody that sees you sees the result of even one wrong word in the right place where they decide to do it. So that's what these people were relating, the horrors that were going on inside Iran when they came over to Washington, D.C. this last year, the discovery of all the bodies by the dam. This latest situation in Iran right now, why is it happening right now? Let me just add this for your audience. Is this isolated? No. Is the timing perchance? No. Venezuela and Iran are intricately tied together. And by the way, when all of the internet went down in Iran, they took it down on purpose. When people couldn't communicate, they were still able to communicate. Why? Because they've had the satellite communication systems of Starlink that they've been using there for the last several months, and more have been showing up. They're not a gift from Elon. They were paid for, but somebody got them in there in anticipation of this moment. Why? Because Iran is intricately tied to Venezuela. What you're really watching is a concerted move not to deal with the terrorists in the Congo, not to deal with the terrorists across Central and South America or here in the U.S., but go right to the heart, the source of a lot of this terrorism, and then cut off the funding. That oil being exchanged on the high seas in violation of the shutdowns of this oil trade and the money from it, we're just stopping the ships from moving at all. So they don't have the money to finance their terrorism and all their drama. Iran's arguably responsible for somewhere between 25 and 50 million people dead in the last 47 years. So we're supposed to just put up with that. And from a global standpoint, we're just going to, go at, they did something here. Well, let's stop them right there. They did something here. Let's stop them right there. It's whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
No, we're right to the core. That's what the genius of what President Trump is doing is.
Don't you think for one second, Juan, that this is sort of unnatural? I mean, you're looking at the moves that Donald Trump and the military team is doing behind the scenes. He's making it look like it's like child's play, like he's done this like 50 times before. He's cool as a cucumber. He's like the smoothest operator that's ever landed in the White House, no question about it. How the hell does he do that?
Well, let me say it maybe a little bit differently. This globalist crowd has made it so that any normal political figure coming up through the ranks would play patty cakes and whack-a-mole so as not to be too disruptive to the world order. Okay, get along, go along, and well, you can't do this because it would hurt that person. You can't do that, so we just have to deal with this one little part. No, the people that invited Trump to run, the people that gamed this out, understand with exacting precision that we're under threat globally by a crew that has the desire and intent at all costs to take control of planet Earth, to place in power a new world order of their people, their families, their choosing, their ways, and to subjugate the rest of us to them. The way that we access technology, the right to work, the right to stay warm and be fed and house ourselves, moving us into their 15-minute cities and deciding what food you eat because it might, cause a carbon problem. And you have to get credits to do it. Even the air you breathe, metering it to you. All bullshit. Complete fucking total asinine bullshit, right? But it has an air of truth. What do you think they were doing at Epstein Island in part? They were blackmailing and honeypotting college professors who would then make sure that their reports came out a certain way and related to the green movement of all things. And it wasn't just Epstein Island, many other
I'm sure there's
locations.
many Epstein Islands out there. He's just one of many.
Right. Right. And so the long and short of it is
Yeah.
you were being sold a scam with the aura of legitimacy, and everybody just had to go along. What Trump has done is, say, cut the crap. We're not doing that. Look at what he just did 2 days ago now. I thought there was bells ringing as the wine glasses banging against each other on the waiter's table there. Anyway, he just shut down 66, an important number, by the way, 66 different agencies that we had agreements with internationally, most all of them through the UN directly, which were counter to American interests, that were promoting things that were un-American, that we were on and paying the bill for. And he says, done over. No entity of the U.S. government, state or federal, can send money to these groups because they're counter to American ideals, ways, etc., and shut them down. So pretty amazing thing. In any other administration, nobody's taken on the UN. Name any of these people in government positions that have effectively gone after the UN. Nobody. Trump's going after them all. We're not going to do the, Paris Accords. We're not going to pay for your bullshit and malarkey. And then going after the belly of the beast, the heart of the beast, with Venezuela, now Iran. Shortly, it's a race.
Right.
Will it be
right.
Cuba or South Africa next?
Right. Well, before we forget, guys, don't forget to follow Juanito at thejennifermac.com, thejennifermac.com. By the way, you're giving Nino a token, one of your silver tokens. Am I in the queue to get one of those too?
Yeah, we don't. They're not here yet. I mean, he was whining and moaning because, but they're in production. So we've done a pre-sale, but they're not probably going to be able to start mailing the first of them out for a couple of weeks. You're just trying to get it so you get the prices while they're here, because you see what's going on with silver, and I expect it to continue to march up. So
yeah, $79.79 as of right now.
Yeah,
well, that's what it closed at yesterday.
Well, it went up $3 yesterday, and so it was down there 74 at the beginning of the week, and then but it was up over 80 the previous week. And I had said to people I thought it would probably soften up a little bit, and so I didn't raise my prices because I had purchased at a little bit lower price, and then we raised them finally, like $5 or something a coin, just to keep from going negative. So
right. So
anyway.
Let's switch gears for a second, Juan, if you don't mind, and let's talk about American.
Oh, and by the way, just so people know,
yeah,
these are proof quality coins. It doesn't go with the spot price of silver.
These are 9%, right?
Yeah, 999, and then they're approved quality. There's a lot more steps to make a coin like that, so it's not like it's just something put out into circulation.
Yeah. So let's talk about military power. Donald Trump has been beating his chest for quite some time. I think he has at some point been taken into back rooms by some of the generals and say, Mr. President, we know you're the president, we respect you, but you got to tone it down. We don't want the enemies out there to really understand how powerful we really are. I'm sure that those conversations have happened behind closed doors. However, I just heard now.
Well, no, I would actually hold on. I would disagree. Part of this move that we're in right now is exactly the opposite. We are, and Trump has said it, we have stuff such amazing stuff. These guys have no idea
What we have.
what we actually have.
Right.
Okay. So he's not keeping it a secret. There's stuff he's keeping secret, but not the fact that we've got
Right.
all sorts of things that we could use and that we have the will
To
to
use
use
it.
them
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
this. So
When we
no,
went,
he's been there.
yeah. When we went in to get Maduro, we went in to get him with stuff that literally sound frequency technology on steroids that will actually melt fucking people and make them bleed from the eyes and the ears and their heads explode and all kinds of crazy shit.
Well, that's
Hence
been
the
around for a
reason.
very long time. I mean, yeah, we've had stuff like that for a very long time. The reason that this particular stuff is, maybe more interesting, where possible, non-lethal, and that just, paralyzed from being able to move in critical situations, lethality is the only answer because you can't put any of our guys. Remember, we had nobody got
Casualties.
hurt.
Zero.
So and we're going up against monsters, by the way. These are people just like the ones that would stick a pellet gun in somebody's eye, some
Right.
young girl's eye, because she said something that they didn't like. No court, no trial, no nothing. They would beat a young girl to death because a little skin showed on her arm. Come on, man. These
Well, you know
are
what's happening in
monsters,
Iran
okay?
right now? They're burning the Ayatollah pictures, and the girls that are doing it are smoking cigarettes, and they're doing it with a lighter, and they're wearing miniskirts as a protest. Do you know that? It's going on right
Well,
now.
part of the thing is that it's in much of what's happened there, it's the women. The men would get targeted even worse, and the women they're not going to bring children into the world under these kinds of threats, and they have basically let the men know either you protect us or we'll go find other men. And that's actually historically something in that region. The women wouldn't allow men who were weak or who weren't good warriors to date their daughters, be married to them if they couldn't prove their worth. Why? Because you need somebody that'll protect you. You have cities and sieges and everything else happened, over a long period of time. The women were the worst victims because they become the slaves. Their kids do.
Yeah.
Daniel, when the Babylonians came in and took Israel, Daniel was a young boy, probably a preteen,
Yeah.
and he was castrated, okay, and then made to just be a clerk, if you will. And because he came from a particular family line that was known for being able to see the future and see visions and dreams, he was set aside as somebody that they would want to be an advisor to the king. And so, but there again, can you imagine being a young boy, not even a teenager yet, and the degradation, the horror, being castrated and then drug off into slavery? That theme is there, through history. And of course, that's, within the female population. They're the ones that are driving this against the Ayatollahs. They're just, in 2018, Iran took a hard turn when they killed this young girl because she was wearing, the full burqa, okay, and she had a little bit showed of a wrist or whatever, and they beat her to death because of that. That was like a tipping point for the people of Iran because it just showed there was no more room to negotiate. For all those years in the interim, they were just trying to get along, go along, negotiate, work together, and that showed that there was never a way that you were going to be able to work with these people. And so the momentum has been building since then. And also this move of God, which is very real. This isn't just somebody preached in the corner and it was really cool and, everybody sings Kumbaya together and have a nice day. It was with great risk to everybody in the population. That move has become so great. There was, when I was speaking with some of the people that were involved here, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, and then worked with Scott Bennett to help him to go over to Iran before he passed away. And he did several trips to Iran. The people there were very adamant that they were not going to allow 2008 to happen again, where they started to try to revolt and then they got suppressed so bad and thousands were tortured to death, killed, people's moms drug out and killed or horribly beaten because their children had done something wrong. They weren't going to allow that to happen. So the leadership within the community was very bold. Several of the Christian leaders went to the police captains in certain areas and to the military commanders in certain areas and told them in no uncertain terms, if one of their moms, one of their children is disappeared, then they will do likewise to that commander. It may take weeks, it may take months, it may take years, but they will never stop. They will go get every last one of them.
Yeah.
And they won't just do one, they'll do, several of them just to make sure. Well, we're in that kind of a moment right now. In fact, one of the people, it's very painful. One of the girls was there protesting talking with the police in a certain area near their command post and telling them that they needed to, back off and let these people alone and blah, blah, blah. And one of the guys who had been one of the people who was the most tormenting to the people in that area walked right up behind her and shot her in the back of the head. And he got away. And then there's some video out where they chased him down in his little white car and shot the car full of holes. And he drives off and crashes. They're not waiting to try and work it out. They're taking up the sword and they're going to defend themselves, in part because even as a Christian, you don't just have the right to defend yourself. You have the responsibility to defend your family against evil. And these people are truly evil. So they're stepping forward, community standards. Okay, yeah, that's a new community standard.
Yeah. Well, look, at this point, do we go into Iran? Do we not go into Iran? What is your thoughts on that, number one? And does this have a lot to do with Trump getting his reset versus the cabal reset? And are we going to go into Colombia? Are we going to go into Nicaragua and Panama? Because this problem's not just on Iran. Iran is just the one place that's actually blowing up right now as far as riots and people revolting, which is about time. But there's a lot of problem areas in the world. You cannot have this global reset and create, 10 million new multimillionaires and billionaires and have, open borders and child trafficking and fentanyl coming through the borders. Someone's going to die. Either the devil's going to die or either evil survives or the light's going to take over. How does this movie end, Juan?
Well, I don't know that we want to say that how the movie ends, but I can tell you that along the way right now, the way this is being done is not to go at peripheral problems and nuisances, which takes tremendous resources. We're going right at the belly of the beast. Cut off the oil supply to China. They stop being a threat to Taiwan. Cut off the oil supply to China and the money supply, and you put an end to a lot of the mischief right off the bat. We're going at the heart of the problem, not at the results.
Are we trying to get China to collapse as well and revolt?
No, we've been very clear. We're not trying to collapse China. We're going to rein them in. Hey, China, come buy the oil at market prices. Stop thieving it. And by the way, what happens on here? I'm going to have to head out momentarily here.
Sure.
What happens? Just one second here.
Are you still stuck in Italy?
Well, I'm not stuck, but I'm here in Italy. Yes. So, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, brother, it's always a pleasure having you. Thank you for coming on moment's notice. I know things are getting heated up. Just, reach out to me anytime you want to come on. If the world is blowing up and you need to come on for 15, 20, 30 minutes, just, I'm always a phone call away.
Well, and the one thing I want to leave people with is what you have to understand about this moment, need to understand, this didn't happen in a vacuum. This has been part of, if you want to say, the plan within not just what Trump is doing, but the people that invited Trump to run. You cannot win back control of the planet unless you have a planet-wide plan. And so a lot of people are looking too close in and not grasping that this is all part of something way, way, way bigger. Iran didn't just start happening in the last few weeks. The planning and coordination assistance of the Iranian people to have it come to a head at this exact time coordinated with what was going on in Venezuela. And you take out Iran, you take out Ramaphosa in South Africa pretty shortly thereafter, and Cuba, and a dozen other places. Iran's involved in Nigeria, with all the horrors there, South Africa, Congo, half a dozen other countries there in the neighborhood, half a dozen countries up there in the Mideast. They've got their hands in all over the place. We start cutting off their money supply and where they're laundering the money through.
Yeah, where do you stand on potentially Vance and Rubio as a ticket in 2028? I mean, I don't want to go down the road of politicians. We've been down this road for 100 fucking years, and look at where it's gotten us. Okay, we don't need politicians. We need businessmen that have fucking Donald Trump's huevos who can run shit. Period.
Yeah, actually, it's not. Look, Ross Perot was a businessman. He was also put in there part of the Rockefeller operation. I know all the details. I can talk about him. I've talked about him on other broadcasts. That doesn't mean that he was the answer. George Bush was presented as a businessman who had business experience with his Zapata oil and all that and the stuff into China. He was anything but. He was an intelligence CIA operation from day one. You've got all sorts of scams that keep getting foisted upon us. It's way early to know who might be the right people or personnel. And by the way, people prove themselves over time. So the person that would be, say, a Vance or a Rubio today isn't the same person we may end up with after a few crises, good or evil. All of them prove themselves over time. Let me say this. I've had people that I fully trusted that have betrayed, gone off the deep end, done horrible stuff. And, what am I supposed to say? I know Trump has people around him like that and he has a hard time believing they become bad people, but they have become, and they are sold out to the stuff, or the stuff comes out. I got a particular senator that I was told eons ago, no, that's the one guy you can trust. And he's the last man standing of the three that were really, we thought, the best, but I wouldn't trust him.
It's not the same senator we know, right?
No, I'm not saying any names, but I wouldn't trust him at this point in time. It's very disturbing to me. We aren't through this. Trump himself has said, it's right there in our movie, The Call, The Makings of a Perfect Day. Trump, the interviewer, he says, you don't know sometimes the people that you have the greatest trust in, at the heat of the moment, when all the chips are down, they're the ones that'll fail you, and the ones that'll actually be on your side and do what they're supposed to, and own up at the critical moment. A lot of times you can't even anticipate and predict them before the fact. I'd be very hesitant to want to think about who's the right choice when we're really, 2 years from getting serious in that campaign. Let everybody kind of fluff their feathers and do whatever. We've got so much incredible, heavy drama ahead. Look, last thing I'll leave with your people, prayer required. I think it's based on stuff that I've got from a number of locations that we probably headed off something that came out of Venezuela that was intended to be used for a 9/11 type event. Even got help from Russia in heading it off because they didn't want to be tainted by what could have occurred. We don't know how this is fully going to break. If we knew exactly, then we wouldn't even have to play the game, okay? There's a lot of back and forth yet ahead. There's a near-death experience for America yet ahead, I believe. There's major, serious drama ahead. And in the course of that, the people that come through on the right side of history, we may not have even seen those people fully, or who precisely survives and why. Take a deep breath. Let's fight the fight we're in right this second, get through this next little bit, and then I'll think about who might be the right one. I think, I remember the pass receiver, Steve Largent. He was on the Seahawks, and there was some playoff game. I was watching Monday Night Football with a bunch of folks there in D.C., and we were talking about this when it happened. And they interviewed him after the fact, and he caught this pass that won the game, whole thing. And it was just, everybody knew he's probably going to pass to Largent and get this pass. So this interviewer is asking him, how does it feel when you have all the pressure and everybody knows that you're the person they're going to want to throw to? And if everything's on the line, if you catch it and get over the line, you win the game. If you don't catch it, it's all on you because you didn't win the game because you didn't do it. And said to him, what are you thinking about at a time like that? I mean, don't you think about all the times you've dropped the ball, how much is at stake and everything else? And Largent said, I don't think about all the times I dropped the ball. I don't think about not catching the ball. I remember all the times I did catch the ball, and I play it through to catch the ball. I'm not worried about the rest of it. I'm there for that exact moment, catch the ball. And every receiver is trained over and over and over and over again. Catch the ball, get it under control, tuck it in, and then move. You got to catch the ball first. If you're already running the touchdown, you're thinking in your mind, how I'm going to run this way and that way and spike the ball and everything else, your brain isn't in the right spot. You're probably going to blow it. Pay attention to the exact moment you're in. Catch the fucking ball, tuck it, and then proceed forward. We have to get through this moment. There's so much on the line that we cannot be letting other people try to distract us by getting ahead of the moment in the game that we are in. You're watching something play out in front of you that generations have dreamed about getting to be here. I have so many people that I'm just the message in the bottle. These guys did amazing things, and they don't get to be here to see what we're watching right now.
That's for sure.
Let's focus on the moment, not get ahead of it, complete the plays that we're in right now. And then when we get closer to that, we can begin to think about playoff games or whatever. Okay.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask you one last question, but let me give myself a couple of plugs before we go. QFS1776.com, guys. If you want to go shopping, that's where you need to go shop. Shop with the good guys. We've got a lot of great stuff there. Just go where it says /shop. You'll see it. Also, Carmine's Gold. Carmine's Gold can get you the silver within 2 weeks, delivered to your doorstep. I don't know for how long we can get you as much as you want right now, but I don't know how long that's going to last. The minimum is $1,000. And there's the minimum for XRP is $10,000. There is no maximum. And text me for either gold or silver at 786-704-8817. You want to get your XRP right now, it's $2.08 this morning. I'm telling you, that's not where it's going to stay. When you see XRP moving like silver's moving $5, $6, $7, $8 a day, that's the hors d'oeuvre. That's what you want to pay attention to. When that starts to happen, bigger things are down the pike. Do we make it, Juanito, or do we need to get ready for to build a bunker?
No, we're watching the world being taken off of this dystopian destruction pathway that Hollywood's been programming into our minds for generations.
Correct.
And recapturing control of the helm of the ship of state and moving not just America, but the world. See, if we have strong partners and countries that don't have the crooked, evil leadership, brothers sharpening brothers, iron sharpens iron. If we have strong allies, we're more secure and safe ourselves here. And by the way, I'll just mention this one thing. Watch what happens with northern Mexico. We're about to make a move that nobody sees coming. And it will move the line a little bit so that we're not as at risk as we've been. So
I think I'm going to make that the title of the actual video.
Okay.
Watch what happens with northern Mexico. I love it. Yeah.
Okay.
Juanito, thank you for coming. One last thing. I know Larry Ballard, him and I are completely on the same page as who we need in 2028. And that is none other than Eric Trump. Are you still not on board with Eric Trump?
Well, I haven't said I'm not on board. I don't know that we know who exactly is the right person. Let's let this, Eric's a great businessman. And again, I have so many friends that, Mike Reagan, a very great close friend, he'd be the first one to tell you there's no way he would want to follow in his father's shoes. It wasn't the path for him. He was more effective in his own lane with the radio stuff that he learned, he trained himself to do than he'd ever have been, and more influential on the country from that position than he would have been as, say, a president. His dad had a path that worked, that made sense for him. I've known the sons of a number of and daughters of a number of very influential people around the world, and some are well positioned to move into those types of roles of leadership. Others, it's something else. So all the 1,000 little things that qualify somebody to be in that position, in that kind of a powerful position, don't necessarily happen to the kids or for the kids, and vice versa. A lot of times the kids have expertise that they have to go in a different direction because, again, they have that. I think there's a divine hand. When we get further along, then we can start considering these things. And even people that, stay in Eric, okay, well, has he received a calling, a commission to do this? I can tell you that President Reagan, my friend Harold Bredesen, was there and was one of, I think, 4 men that were present when there was a word from the Lord, and it came from Harold Bredesen to President Trump, prayed with him, and then said, if you'll follow my ways, my directives, etc., I'll make you the occupant at 1700 Pennsylvania Avenue, which was, of course, the White House. And Reagan would tell you that his hands were shaking and everything else because he felt that there was a move of God at that moment, that he had never fully considered that. And a decade later, that's where he was.
Yeah.
So sometimes, there's an anointing from God, a commission that a person may be in that upper reaches somewhere, but it still isn't like, God called you. And even when Reagan lost to Carter through election fraud, he came back and won 4 years later. There's a divine component to this. Let's get through the next moves and then think about these things as we get further on, and not allow people that aren't savoring the moment, maximizing the moment. Let's not let them take us off course.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, we won't. But he was asked the question point blank. On Patrick Bet-David. Would he consider running if he was called to in 2028? And that option is definitely not off the table. And I think he's got the perfect wife to be a first lady, to be quite frank. I think Laura Trump is absolutely quintessential, the perfect model for a first lady.
Well, let's see what God does.
Yes. Thank you, brother. Always a pleasure.
All right.
Thank you. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.